And when you see Willy on the screen, when he comes on the screen, and because he's not supposed to come on for actually 2 more minutes, when he comes on the screen, this will be likened to when we have the Dalai Lama, when he comes November the 10th, right? And we talked about it, and I think everybody can bring at least one, right? Okay? All right. Okay, let me tell you his bio. Willy Mutabazi. M-U, there it is. That's how you spell it if you want to quote him or put him in your next paper, all right? Or when you talk about him, when we go our places, we need, this is our lab and now there is our lab too, right? We don't just keep our information in here. Otherwise, we're like colonizers. Who do we think we are, huh? So anyway, Willy is a youth influencer. Doesn't that sound great? Youth influencer. Willy is a Rwandan youth influencer and innovator. After spending much of his childhood living on the streets, Willy was connected to a filmmaker. He's a filmmaker who featured Willy in a documentary about youth and dance. So he uses art as a place of resistance, right? That experience inspired Willy to create his own documentary titled Kigali Street Kids, which brought him international notoriety. Today, Willy is a jack of all trades. He's a model, an actor, and youth influencer in Kigali and all around the world. The variety of NGOs, that's non-governmental, there he is, non-governmental. It's like our nonprofits, right? So you will hear him talk about NGOs supporting youth health in Rwanda. He is the owner of a tour company, an IT professional, and also supports the work of nonprofit organizations that supported him during his childhood. So I welcome you to our guest speaker. We're so happy to have you. I told them how wonderful you were this morning, and so we're so happy to have you, Willy.
Thank you so much.
All right. And Willy, we want to do it just like we did it this morning, and that is I asked Willy to talk about Rwanda before the genocide, right? And for this young man to understand what was going on in Rwanda way before he was even a twinkle in his mother's eye, or his mother was a twinkle in her mother's eye, and then talk about what's going on in Rwanda post-genocide, okay? So right now we'll talk about Rwanda, you know, early Rwanda, what led to this, what you feel like it did, your analysis, and then most current Rwanda. And then we'll talk some, and then we'll have Q&A, but in order for it to be videotaped, right, we want you to come here, right here, so that we can really see you, all right? And I'll give you the mic. And if you want to sit down, because I don't want to stand up, then you got a chair, all right? So we give it to you, Willy. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me again, and I'm really happy to be with you this evening. And it's an honor for me to have this opportunity to talk about my country and share the little I know of my country. And as she mentioned, I'm going to try to talk about Rwanda before genocide, before 1994. And I believe that you guys have been reading a novel that talks more about, focuses on what was going on in 1994, the genocide. But there is a whole amazing history and the culture and the beautiful Rwanda before all that. And then I'm going to talk about Rwanda now, which is currently my most favorite topic to talk about, is the Rwanda that me and many young people are growing up in. So Rwanda, basically I'll start with Rwanda before the colonial. Before the colonial was very, very small country, that kingdom actually, that was kind of expanding as around that time, it was kingdom taking over the kingdom. And Rwanda was literally, there was no tribal, as you've been reading in the books, in a novel that you're reading about Tutsi, Hutu, and Twa. There was no tribe in Rwanda, and as there is no tribe now, what we had was social classes. What you hear as tribe that lead to the genocide that you know about was mostly social classes. What we had was Hutu and Tutsi and Twa, and Tutsi were people with most cows, and our social classes was based on how many cows you had, and you could move from back and forth between the social class. You could work very hard and move from being in the class of Hutu into the Tutsi class. But then that was explored when Rwanda was starting to be colonized by German in 1897. And when the Belgium took over after the Germans, they empowered one class, which is kind of what created this whole hate that started. So the ideas of genocide did not start in 1994, and it started way long before then. In 1959, that's when the Hutu started getting empowered and started the action of violences, and most Tutsi, that's when they left the countries and were living in an exile. And that happened mostly because if you look at the other countries that surrounded us, it was very easy for the colonial to break in and be adopted. When they came in Rwanda was a very small country and people were really connected. It was hard to break in. The one of the way was easy is to just get the people divided to themselves. But as I say that, I always liked to explain and say that as Rwandan, even if we blame mostly what happened to the colonial, we should also take responsibility of accepting that kind of hateness, that kind of divide, or where we allow someone to come and tell us you're different because you look different from this person and all that. And that kind of, we also kind of allowed the hatred to grow up and continue over years and years, and ready to what happened, what the rest of the world know as genocide that happened in 1994. And I won't go so much in the details. I know you guys have been reading so much about that, and I can answer some of the questions that you might have that during genocide, in the genocide, when you guys ask questions. What I want to focus mostly on and talk about is Rwanda after genocide. So it's only been 25 years, reading to 26 years since genocide. So as you can hear, or if you've seen some photos or videos, after genocide, the country was destroyed. There was no people, there was no older people, most people have fled the country, and the country, there was no roads, there was no buildings, a lot of things were demolished. The country was very dirty and just full of basically broken people and broken things all around the country. In 2000, around 2000, Rwanda, that's when Rwanda, like the new government starting to kind of put systems in place to improve the country. And the few things that really put Rwanda where it is today was the people that were left in the country. First of all, what needed to be done there was to try to bring people back together. After genocide, there was a lot of hate and fear in the country, among perpetrators, among survivors. So there was this whole awkwardness all around the country. And one of the things that helped was this system that was introduced that I told the group that I talked this morning that they should research more about it. And if you guys get a chance, you should look more into it. It was a system called Gachacha. The idea of it was mostly to bring justice to most people who committed genocide. But it was also a chance for survivors to find out where their beloved ones were thrown in all around the country in different holes or digging in the genocide to just throw bodies in. So how it worked was Rwandans, as I explained, they all like knew each other, people in the local community, they talk, everybody knows, like 10 houses surrounds them. People were gathering in their local village, and they will talk, they will share stories, they will talk what happened. And there was protection for survivors so they could share stories, but also for perpetrators. What I was expecting there, that which really helped a lot, was if you could come up front and admit to what you've done and tell and help the survivors to find their beloved ones, you could, instead of spending 40 years in a prison, you would maybe spend 7 and do another 5 years of community service, which is building roads and building schools and help in any way. And then after that, you'll be reintegrated back into the society. So a lot of people, that helped a lot of people, a lot of survivors, including me, in finding where their beloved ones were. But also it brought people back together, and it kind of worked as the counseling. As that time we didn't have a lot of, still we don't have that much of mental facilities that to help people cope up with what happened. So people sharing and talking was obviously very emotional and very, very sad, but it served as help for a lot of mental issues. So when that happened, it helped a lot of people to kind of accept what happened in genocide. I'll give you an example how it worked for me and as my personal story, and it will help you understand how that helped change. I found out about this gachacha when I was 12 years old. Happened due after genocide, which includes a lot of young people my age. Well, we found ourselves in the street, living on the street because of the poverty, not having families. And to that, I was living on the street since I was 8 years old until I was 12. And when I was 12, I witnessed gachacha, and I witnessed the person who murdered my family, my twin brother and my dad, coming up and speak. It helped me to get one thing, a closure, just to know, because before that I never know really what happened. But I was very angry, and I took it in a negative way first, in a negative side first. I wanted to have revenge. I wanted to kill him and kill his whole family. But the only way I could do that, as I was telling the group earlier, in Rwanda, we don't have access to guns, and so I could take a gun as a 12-year-old and do that. I wanted to grow up and become 16 and join the army and maybe steal a gun and go kill him with his whole family. So I had to make a choice to go to school, and I joined the organization that you heard about in my bio, that it's called Les Enfants de Dieu. It's a center that I grew up in. And even if I wanted to have revenge, but I have enough time to really go through all my options and think. And one of the things I realized is, yes, let's say I go and have revenge. So what? I will end up in a jail, and there would not be a difference between me and the person. Long story short, I end up making a choice of forgiving this guy, which I will come back to it a little bit later. But stepping back a little bit to what I was talking about gachacha and how that helped. And that was just for me and a lot of people. They met people who they share same stories, especially a lot of people, women and parents. They started making co-ops of meeting and talking and sharing what happened, and through that we came up with a lot more cooperatives. So all these people that were meeting to share stories, they started meeting. They started to think, what could they do to improve their lives, which is one of one of the things one of the problem people were facing is the life that they were living under the poverty and stuff. And with government putting a lot of effort in empowering co-ops, that people that gets together, the country start developing. And of course, education start being the major thing in Rwanda, and people, and then this unit of getting together and conciliation, and even the people who perpetrator were doing a great service to the country. Majority of the roads we have were being built then by perpetrators, and a lot of schools that we have were being built by perpetrators that were in prison at the time serving their time, and later on got reintegrated back into society. So Rwanda today is being an example country all around Africa and in the world, as right now it's being known as one of the safest places to be in the world, one of the safest country in the world, which is funny. When I first came to America, most people were like, every time I say I'm from Rwanda, they'll be like, oh, the genocide place, are you okay? Are you gonna go back, staying? Are you safe to go? And they're always shocked when I tell them that since I came to America, I've heard or seen on TV more crime than I've ever seen in my whole life. And they always find it surprising, because everybody think Rwanda as a place where horrible things are happening at the moment. But it's really one of the safest places to be in the world. And now Rwanda and Kigali, the capital city of Rwanda, is the cleanest city in Africa, and number 7 in the world, cleanest place. And I think Rwanda is going to be the first country to ban completely all plastics, if it works. They've already banned since 2007, I think, banned plastic bags. So if you visit, please don't bring any plastic bag. Another thing is the country is developing really fast, and that is because people are really working together to really develop. And luckily also the government, there's no perfect government. I never want to be biased when it comes to politics and stuff, but if you see Africa, most government in Africa have known to be very corrupt, and the corruption is one of the things that is really killing most countries in Africa. And we've been lucky that our government have not really focused on fighting against corruption. So that is really pushing Rwanda in the development and in infrastructure and everything. And also Rwanda is focusing on educating youth, because we've learned from the past that youth could fix everything or could also destroy everything. And as we found, a lot of youth were easily, if you don't educate them, they can easily be manipulated into bad actions. Like a lot of youth who were into genocide, they were easily manipulated and easily brainwashed to do it. So educational is like the major thing. First of all, Rwanda, one thing they put first is national security, and then education and health. And I will talk more about health when you guys ask me questions about it, but it's also like one of the fastest growing Rwanda is developing and make sure that everybody has health care system and people health, and fighting this kind of diseases that are attacking most places in Africa. So that's kind of like where Rwanda is. And what else can I say about Rwanda? If I forget anything, please ask me in questions. I hope you have more questions. Yes, and women, thank you so much for reminding me that. That's one thing Rwanda is being known for now. As you know, if you read a lot of in the culture in most countries in Africa, the culture, we've always put women behind, and Rwanda also was one of the countries that women were known basically to just stay home, raise children, and that's it. But I'm proudly right now to say that our development is growing faster since we started involving women in everything. And that really started by when we started realizing that whatever we had that was working, small that we have was working, which is like mostly markets and other things were being improved, were being that was growing, was being run by the women. So we started this program that I remember the person who started it was a deputy or someone like that, saying that a country or a family with women in charge is not a country. And he started this whole program of kind of like empowering women, and people start noticing that it is actually a problem. It is actually, there's 2 children and one is being favored in everything and another child is being left behind. And people started opening eyes and people realized, oh, this is actually what we've been doing and it's wrong. Since then, we started putting system and places to empower women and young girls. And one of the systems we used was in education. A lot of young girls were not going to school, just staying home and doing the household, housekeeping things. So they started making sure that every house that has a young girl, make sure that the girls is also going to school, and the parents were being questioned if any of their children is not going to school. And then in the school system, they put more marks for girls to pass. Like I remember for national exam in high school, it was around 51 to pass the national exam marks, and for the girls was 48. So that kind of empowered a lot of young girls to go to secondary school and finish secondary school. And since then, we have more girls going to school, going to university. Before, girls were expected to be married by age of 20, 21. If a girl was 25 and not married yet, it was seen as if there's a problem, something wrong. Right now, we have more women in government position. We have about 62% of position in government position are women. Most big business are being run by women. I'll give you an example. The Rwanda Development Board, which is a big unit in the government that runs business. If you want to do business in Rwanda, tourism, everything, it's being run by this amazing, smart woman. So since then, it's shown that the progress, that the power, and we're empowering other countries as well in Africa. As I think there is this organization of French-speaking countries in the world in general. The president of it for the whole Africa is a woman from Rwanda. So that is another thing to be proud of as Rwandan. I probably skipped or forgot. There's so much to talk about when we talk about Rwanda now and about myself. So I will leave it open to answer more and talk more about when I'm being asked some questions.
Hello, Willy. Thank you. Here again, teaching public health and biology on this campus. So I have 2 questions. One is related to the current relationship between the Hutus and Tutsi. Are they still exist? How people beyond yourself, the whole country, how 2 groups of people can live side by side with each other, how the process is going. Yeah, second question is regarding the public health infrastructure. I know the healthcare system as well as public health infrastructure has been destroyed during the genocide. and how the country facing so many problems in the country aftermath. Healthcare as one of the priorities, how that affecting the whole country.
Thank you so much for that's a great question. One of the first question about if the Hutu and Tutsi still exist and how people are kind of living together, the perpetrators and survivors are living together. First of all, we don't have Hutu and Tutsi thing anymore. So that in a genocide, it was used as an excuse saying that we have a tribe. So we've identified that there's not tribes in Rwanda. If any of you have ever read about tribes or know about tribes, mostly tribes are groups of people that speaks different languages, have different culture, different kind of food, different kind of behavior. We never had that in Rwanda. Rwandans speak same language, same culture, same food, same almost everything. This was only just based on physical appearance and the little ID that was given by the colonial that said that you were Hutu or you were Tutsi, you this. So that is gone. There is no Hutu, no Tutsi in Rwanda. Actually, in fact, if anybody tried to use it in a threatening way, you can go to prison up to 5 years. So, and people have kind of actually mixing up. I cannot tell you even by what they used to use as a physical appearance. I cannot tell who's Hutu, who's Tutsi. So we don't have that. Second of it is a lot of people. I would say that a lot of people in Rwanda are living. Survivors are living with perpetrators, and a lot of people have moved on and forgive. And I like to talk about what this forgiveness is. And we have had time. I explain it in like 3 ways. When something like this big happens to you, you have a lot of options. You have option to be angry for the rest of your life and hate for the rest of your life. And a lot of time that affects mostly you. And then you have option to try and have revenge, which is one of the options that I shared that I tried. I thought about it and I tried. In a small country, there's no way you're gonna have a revenge or kill someone and get away with it. So you're gonna be caught and you're gonna go to jail. Another option is run away, go somewhere far away where you don't think about it. And we do have people who have left the country, and I always find every time I talk to a few people like that the people who have freed and lived somewhere else, they somehow kept it inside. And then you have option of accepting what happens and deal and accept it and let go and forgive. Not because you want to do a favor to the other guy, because it's mostly affecting you. And that's made me, and that's mostly an example. I'm an example of it. That's why I am where I am today. There is a time in my life I was going through that. All I could think of was the person killed my family, and I know where he was. And just to be able to live with that was very difficult for me. And I was angry and I was unhappy and I was sad all the time. And I had so many excuses why nothing good can ever happen to me. Why every time I hear that I could do this, I'll be like, no, I can't, because I went through this, because my family was good, because I never had this chance, because I never had, it was always why nothing can happen for me. Until I went through all those options I told you, and I realized that I am destroying my life, my own life. And I'm the only reason why I'm keeping myself, not just what happened. What happened in the past is that I'm responsible for the rest of, for now and future. And I decided to accept what happened to me and not use it as an excuse to not move on. And I tried. Forgiving is not something that just happened in one night, but I forgive the person who killed my family. And by that is accepting him, accepting, knowing that he's there and it's okay. and I have accepted it. And I forgive without anybody asking for it. And since ever then, I started seeing all I'm capable of, all the talents that I had, and what I could do to make my future and my mom's future. And I forgot to mention something. For me, it was my mom that was my inspiration to move all this, because I realized that I had this amazing woman who have done everything to save me, to keep me alive in the genocide, and she is dying unhappy. And the only son that she had left was I was destroying my life. And I realized that I have a chance to focus on her and make her life better. And that was my inspiration. And for everybody else, there's a lot of inspiration that if you talk to people and hear people's stories that inspire them. But that was just an example to show you that it's not just me. A lot of people went through kind of the same process, and a lot of people now have forgiven. Doesn't mean they've forgotten. They still feel sad. Those wounds are still there, and probably will forever be there. And there is effects of that, which is one of them is not having, for example, not having grandparents. Not every time you remember that you don't have grandparents, you don't have a lot of relatives, big family. It's all reminder. So we remember, but a lot of people have forgiven, and a lot of Rwandans are living next to people who murdered their family, and they have accepted them, and there's this whole reconciliation that happened that lead to that, and majority of people are living happily since they accepted and forgive. So I hope I answered that question in particular. And quickly to talk about the health system. Rwanda is also, like, as most countries are developing, we're not an advanced in health. Our health system is not advanced as the Western world, but we're doing really good. Like I mentioned briefly that Rwanda then put a system to provide health care card for majority of people, and that is being divided into classes. So if you're on the poverty line, you could get this card for free. And if you're earning some money, according to depend on how much money you're on, you pay to get this card yearly. And mostly it's between $5 and $15, depending on what class you're on. And that helps for access to public hospitals and everything. And the majority of the health system that we needed is educating people on healthcare, and the education ministry have focused so much on that and putting courses and systems to educate people, and it's working well, because one thing that I mentioned is even if Rwanda is small, but also people are very connected. People know everybody in their neighbors, so it's very easy to get people together and talk. And one of the system is we have this I mentioned it earlier with a group in the morning. We have this cleaning day in Rwanda. It's called Umuganda. It happens every last Saturday of the month. Everything shut down from 7 a.m. to midday, and everybody gets together in their community where they live, and they either clean, or they help someone, or they fix the road, or they fix something. And after that, they take about 35 minutes of a meeting to talk about what's happening in the home. And for that, people get to talk their problems and share and talk about what's going on. So it's easy to educate people in that way and access. And so I would say, in general, that the health system is growing on a good pace in Rwanda.
Hi, Willy. Thank you for sharing your story. The question I have, I'm just so impressed with your journey from anger to a place of what I'm perceiving as somewhat peace. In your work with youth, is that some of the work that you do with them, is bringing them from a place of extreme, understandable anger to a place of forgiveness?
Yes, actually, that's really what I'm trying to do so much, is work with young people that especially the ones who've gone through the same kind of struggles that I went through, the ones who lived on the street, who have really had it hard from a young age. And I am sharing a lot of like personal stories and correcting other stories, success stories, and kind of like inspiring stories from other children, and sharing it with whatever youth that I can get, or not just in Rwanda, all around the world. And I use my what I call as forgiveness. I'm actually making a documentary about this. Call it my ways of forgiving. And when I talk about it with the youth, I use it in a way that as a key for me to get to a successful life that I'm living now. And the whole point sharing with the youth is that accepting and see things with open eye and forgiving can be the key to really access your potential for the future. And because we have a lot of youth who are angry, my age, who are still angry, and they confused because they don't know what could be done, and they're in the same situation I was in. They cannot access their full potential because they're angry, they're sad, and they have a lot of excuse, the same way I say, and they're very unhappy. And I share it and use it in educating them in a way that if you're not happy and you're focusing on a path, you will never be successful. You will stay where you are. And the only way is to really accept whatever else you're going. It doesn't have to be about genocide. I was talking with youth my age in America, somewhere in Vermont, and these children, these young people are also facing kind of like different cause, but kind of like a similar result of what's going on in their life. And it's the same. I find that it's the same. There is a lot of anger, and if you're angry and sad and unhappy, there's no way you're gonna be able to access the full potential and if you're unhappy. So yes, I am using this to help a lot of other youth.
Hi.
Hi.
You're so handsome. I had to say it because and so I just thought I'd let you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was. You're right. Is this being recorded? Awesome. So in the memoir Cockroaches, the author talks a lot about Catholicism. And I can tell, I haven't gone through the whole book yet. We haven't gotten through the whole book yet, but there seems to be somewhat of resentment from the author's view towards Catholicism. And so I'm just wondering if in Rwanda now, if that is something that is practiced, and if it's not, then what spiritual or religious practices are in
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that question. Actually, it didn't come up already, and I think it's an important question. As you read at most books, or you hear or you see in the movies, religious was big influence in the genocide, especially Catholics. When you're visiting a lot of memorial sites and genocide sites, you find a lot of them are Catholic churches where people ran to think that they'll be safe in the genocide. They'll be like, nobody will kill you, and this is a house of God. And actually it did work. And when genocide was being tested, I think like about 30 years before 1994, there was cases where people ran in the church and they were saved. But in 1994, a lot of people ran into churches and thinking they'll be safe. And there was a lot of priests that were involved, priests and pastors that were involved, that locked. We have a lot of churches that priests themselves locked people in the church and called the militias and came throw grenades in and killed everybody. So after genocide, we had people who become either extreme and extreme to the religious, and we had people who were resented to religious. And there is both. There is people who have really, who since then stopped believing in God, and they have this huge resentment towards any religious in church, and then we have people who view it. I have an example. My mom. My mom was not very strongly believer Christian before genocide, but since somehow after she became even stronger religious and stronger, closer to the church, she goes to church more often. And another example is me. After genocide, with all that confusing, I needed something to believe in. I went through all religious. So I would say majority religious in Rwanda is still Catholic. And there's a lot of Protestant churches growing up, just like everywhere else. I went through all of them, and I even became Muslim. The last religion I joined was Muslim. And if you look, for me, every religion, I just wanted something to make me feel better. I wanted something to make me feel strong. And for a lot of people, it's the same. They either hated it completely, or they either were so weak, they felt so weak, they wanted something to hold them, so they become even stronger believers. I don't know if that answers your question. And also to say that a majority of the biggest religion we have in Rwanda, it's still Catholic.
Good evening, Willy. This is your dean.
Good to see you. Great to see you again.
Yes, also you. Okay, I'm going to ask you two questions. The first one has to do with Gichacha. Can you please explain the Gichacha process and how it helped people to reconcile what had happened, this violence?
So Gachacha, like I said, was first an idea that was set up as a trial, because the studies that were done says that if it wasn't for this kind of like a local trial, it would have took hundreds and hundreds of years to be able to capture and serve justice to all people who've committed the genocide. So imagine in the whole country, it was happening twice a week, and everybody in the country knew that this afternoon was for Gachacha, and people would go and share and talk. And through this, all the people who committed the genocide were able, majority of them, the ones who were in the country, were able to be captured and either go to jail, but go through the trial. And the second important thing that Gachacha did was, I mentioned it helped a lot of survivors to bury their beloved ones in respectful ways. In that process, I was able to find the little left of bodies of my dad and my twin brother. And they're now in the museum, in the Genocide Museum. The third important thing that came from Gachacha was the reconcile system. So Gachacha is no longer on now, it's finished, but through Gachacha, they came up with many more co-ops to put programs to put together so they voted counselors, people who help, and they would put groups of perpetrators and survivors in one room to just talk, let it all out, whatever anger, or if you have to ask for forgiveness, do it all in group. And through that talking and the progress and help of the counselors that were there, that it helped these groups of reconciliation to come up, and that came from Gachacha.
Thank you. So Gichacha is largely dialogue and talking through the experiences people went through. Thank you so much. Now, my second question has to do with the life cycle of families. And you talked earlier, I asked you about the loss of parents and grandparents. And I'd like you to describe what that loss left in terms of being able to transmit the culture to the next generation. And with that, what does that mean for you and the children you want to have?
Yeah. I'll start with what that means for me and the children I have. For me, first of all, one of the sad thing that really comes back, especially when I see people with like, you know, grandparents, and when I watch like movies that have grandparents and all the cool and fun things that people do with their grandparents, it makes me wish all the time that I've had the chance to have a grandparents. And that is the same for a lot of people my age, especially. Because we've lost a lot of older people. And like I mentioned it earlier, I think it could be one of the reasons why Rwanda is losing a lot of culture. We're adapting very much quickly the Western world cultures. And I think we don't have enough older people and older stories and culture stories that goes through young people. So we are capturing wherever we can get, wherever we adapt from other countries. And that is actually a big problem for a lot of young people. And I think recently we are realizing that the countries and the government is realizing that, and we are starting to put the culture in education. So now there's a lot of programs of our culture that are being taught to younger kids. And because Rwanda has an amazing, beautiful culture, old culture, and this whole connection with cattle keeping and the sport and the kingdom and family values. And most people can't learn it from parents, from grandparents, because we don't have them. So we're starting to put them in. The government is empowering young people or whoever who can write books and make films and music that talks so much about our culture. And for the generation coming, I guess also, like, it's been out 25 years. I feel like my kids will have a grandma, my mother. But no matter how many years it's gonna be, the generations to come will be affected by the losses of all the people that we had. My kids are gonna ask me stories about my grandparents, and I'm not gonna have any of those stories. And it will affect the generation coming too.
Thank you.
On your chair. So hello again, Willy.
Hello.
I hope you can see me way back here.
I can see you.
We read a book in my U.S. history class recently, 1984, in which the author Orwell projects 50 years into the future. What do you see for Rwanda's 50 years in the future?
Thank you. Actually, that's a great question. Rwanda, there's a few things that Rwanda is going to be. First of all, when it comes to development, Rwanda is going to be, I'll give you an example of a country. Rwanda, in a look-wise, Rwanda is going to be like Singapore. That's actually like the role model of Rwanda, I think, in terms of how first in development. And it's going to be a country that is going to inspire a lot of countries that are facing problems today in Africa. It already is inspiring a lot of countries in Africa. There is still a lot of countries in Africa that are going through exactly what we went through. And Rwanda is starting slowly to inspire, and it's growing fast. That it's going in 50 years, it's going to be really, really like one of the big example, not just for countries in Africa, all around the world. And I think it's also there's something that I'm not really I'm scared of mostly is Rwanda is, you're gonna come to Rwanda and not know what really original Rwanda is. I'm afraid that we're adapting too much of we're copying too much of America and the Western countries. That's the only like something that I'm afraid of, that that even now when I walk in Kigali, it doesn't really look any different from when you walk in San Francisco. So that's like what I can say. But on a positive side, I think it's gonna be the role model of most countries, and everybody's gonna learn something from Rwanda.
All right, Willy. My question is, you mentioned the importance of education now, post-genocide. And so my question is, we're learning this semester about the power of how you retell history. As far as the youth that are coming up and are in history classes, what is taught to them about what happened and the tragedies that genocide what happened with that?
Thank you. So there is, especially for Rwandan history, we have to be careful, make sure that we teach history as it is, and not make up stories. And that's why actually we're focusing on writing everything down and put like videos and graphic to whatever that we have, so it won't be misinterpreted in the near future. And for as of now, when kids are taught history, they're taught everything, the pre-genocide, how genocide was prepared, and how mostly the influence of youth in genocide, and as well as in stopping genocide, because we have to remember again that one of the unique thing about Rwandan genocide was it was done by Rwandans and it was stopped by Rwandans. So the whole history of how it all started and how it was stopped, and the ideology and where the ideology came from of genocide, and there's programs that are just basically based on fighting against the ideology of any genocide that could come up, because dividing, it's nowadays in the world, it's easy to divide people and make them think that the other person is not human, and that's really what's leading to all this massive killing and civil wars happening, is whenever we can manipulate another person to look another human being, be like, you're not a human, and you see a person as a cockroach, as the book mentioned it. That's how it was in Rwanda. The perpetrators were told that those are not people, they're cockroach. So if you get to an environment where you don't look a human as a human, you're gonna be easily kill a person without thinking of it. Same way you will step on an ant or kill a cockroach. So the history is being taught well, and it's still very early. So even if you don't really learn it from school, you can still experience it, you can still see it. And like I don't know if I mentioned it, like every April, which is April, starting from April 7th, we have a week of commemoration and then 100 days. In that week of commemoration, literally, even if you've never been to Rwanda or never heard about Rwanda, if you come to Rwanda, you can exactly see what happened. You can feel it. Everything shut down, and everything is all about to talk about what happened, talk about genocide, and keep talk about it and share. And you hear testimonies, and the TV programs, the radio programs, all they teach, all they talk about is what happened. And you hear it from people's stories, personal stories. Now, it haven't been hundreds of years that where you only read about it. You can still, young people who are being born today, they still hear it from their aunts, their uncles and parents. I don't know if that answers the question.
But what an excellent tradition of memorizing it every single year and give people opportunity to discuss it, facing it, rather than be themselves silently. Yeah. My question is responding to your comments, your envision of Rwanda 50 years is more like Singapore. So that triggered my question, what is the political system in Rwanda? How the government was elected? Because Singapore has been economic successful story, but politically it is really a dictatorship there.
Well, Well, if you look at Rwanda, you would say it's kind of the same. I mean, we have one president since genocide, and this is the president. This is the guy who was in charge of stopping genocide, the leader. And the one other thing that I can say though, I don't know if I can call it fully dictatorship, because he's been voted multiple times, and he's liked, very much liked. People love him, and that of course also comes with the concern for me, being honest, not being biased, is since that the system is really depending on one person. My question, what I ask myself a lot now is, let's say this guy is great and he is really pushing building Rwanda for better, but what happens if he dies, since the system? So I wouldn't say our system is great, it's not 100% democratic, but I also really don't know if just because democratic way works for example, America, or works somewhere else, I don't know if I can't say that's 100% works for everybody. It is a concern that that our system depends on one strong person, because if that person is not there and there's another person, and if that person is not good, there is issues. So when it comes to our political system, I have mixed up feelings and worries, but I honestly, as a person, I'm hoping for the better, and I'm hoping that we as Rwandan, we will be able to continue making better choices, regardless whether of this what system works for who. So far, people they've been wanting just this one guy to keep running, and I can understand in one ways, in a way that he's been doing a good job, and his vision for Rwanda it's been amazing, and he's not perfect. Like, you know, there's few things that I'm not proudly about my country as well, especially about my government. But when I look at the countries that surrounds me, I realize that it can be worse. So I'm thankful for what we have now. And for your question, and for the person who asked me the question about 50 years, that's among something that I think anyone who really look deeply and not being biased can be worried about.
I know this morning you talked about if someone, here's a question, but I'm going to finish this one then. When someone commits a crime, if they go to prison, you talked about what happens, how many years, and then what happens when they get out. So could you explain that?
I think most what I talked about was people who committed, especially like before the genocide crimes. And also the systems I think that Rwanda is trying to put is, there is no point of putting someone in prison for 50 years and just feed them. And I don't believe, and I personally don't believe that really changes the person just because you lock them up for the rest of their life. Is giving opportunity people who are in prison to really learn and not only learn about like school or whatever, learn about themselves and give them a chance to do something good. And I think that's one thing that Rwanda does. If you look, majority of people who have big crimes, which means they have sentenced to many years, this system is, if you show that there is change in you and you're ready to accept, and you kind of like accept what you did. And
Okay, we're back.
hello.
Okay. All right. Question you want to say?
Yeah, I like this spot. It's a good spot. My question is, what is humor like in Rwanda? Like, what do people find funny, and is like comedy films like popular, or music comedy wise?
Yeah, comedy is growing in Rwanda, but I would say what is funny is we have these films, like a local films, kind of like based on daily people's life and like funny things that happen in people's life, and they're like series. I don't know if anybody watches like Nigerian like drama movies. Yeah, so they're kind of funny. So we kind of have something similar to that is funny. Like most people, like they know what time it goes on TV, and everybody's just ready to laugh, laugh. And then we have radio program. I like film, but only all you can hear is based on sound, just voices, and it's like I don't know how it's called in English, but it's like a program on radio that is just like being acted, but it's very funny. That's kind of like what I think the humor is like.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you so much for sharing. I was really struck by the way in which community really seems involved with the government. Like it just seems like they're really well partnered and like they have a really active role in that. So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about what sort of like actual has the government implemented.
Sorry, I missed something. I missed something. What did you say? What sort of what?
These laws or things like that. If you could talk a little bit more about that around the laws that the government has created to sort of bring social structure and people together.
Mm-hmm. So one of that is getting local people, small people, especially in the rural areas, I give them access to talk to the people in charge, people who are making decisions about their life. And one of that is the way just itself, the way government is structured, it makes it very easy to connect between government and the local people. So we have like every 10 house have a government representative in the cells, and then above that, every I think 50 or between 50 and 70 house are also in a sector. And so like the 10 houses, they can easily tell their problems to the representative, and that representative can easily access to the sector, and from the sector the system goes to think the city, and the city to the minister, and the minister to the president. So and through that is first of all the easy access to really access the government. And then that program of Umuganda, I mentioned that at the end of Umuganda there's 30 minutes to talk about whatever people are not happy with. And in the meetings, because it's meetings of where people live, so let's say certain minister lives in that neighborhood, they normally attend Umuganda where they live, and that's a chance for people to have access to them and talk to them. And another thing is there is like empower. There is youth. I actually was chosen to be one of them, but apparently I was not interested in. I find that there's another way to help without being part of, without joining a government. Among youth in schools or in universities, they pick a youth influencer who is like a government employee who works for government, who is a representative of youth in the government. And we have youth deputy in the parliament as well. And same with women. Women have like the representatives who basically works with all programs that works in empowerment of families. Now we no longer just say empowering of women, because we've kind of achieved that empowering of families. And so there is lots of people who have, I would say, to answer the question in a brief way, there is easy access of local people to the government. I don't know if that kind of answers the question.
That's fine.
may I ask why you decided to move to the United States? Because Rwanda sounds really nice now.
I did not move. I still live in Rwanda.
Oh.
I'm in the United States doing some training in a business. Actually, as you mentioned in my bio, I work with NGO and I work as a fixer. So there's someone who's gonna start a big dental clinic in Rwanda, and since they want to employ a lot of youth and also attach charity part of it to, he will be scanning and doing free treatment in the local villages to help people. So I say I want to be a part of it, and I'm in Denver doing some training at some of his clinics. He has 7 dental clinics here, learning so I can help. So I'm helping him setting up and register and start that big dental clinic. So I'm only here for about almost 2.5 months, and then I'll be back home. So it's a chance for me to travel, but I still live in Rwanda.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so maybe we can bring him here, huh? SNA, SNA, SNA. Okay. Annie? Oh, you're here. SNA is here, right? So any more questions or? Yes.
Hi, Willy.
Hi.
Can you see me?
Yes, I can see.
I'll come this. Okay. Thanks for sharing your story. It's really empowering. I am just curious, when you were talking about young people today, like still needing positive influence, like looking through your history, where do you think they would go if they weren't being positively influenced, to go in a good direction or do things that are helping the country? I guess just to get in reflection, why is youth empowerment so important, and where is the country more or less, I guess, during the genocide, like faltering? Like, why do youth need such structure? Is it because a lot of them are now missing parents or grandparents, like you were talking about?
So yeah, so if a lot of youth haven't grown in a stable family, and have the parents kind of structure to help them grow, it's very easy to really manipulate young people and get them to do wrong. It's very easy, and we've seen the effect of that. So, and we've also seen that the youth has all energy that you need to develop any community and country. So if you focus on the youth, you will see result in anything. And Rwandan youth needed more influencer because, first of all, they went the ones who were alive in the genocide, they went through hell, they went through a lot of trauma, so they needed some strength and then some really good directions of where they can take their futures. Because one of the fear I think we have is, if we have a lot of youth who have lack opportunities to be raised by parents and the guidance of parents, and it's easy to really pull them again in the same kind of action that happened in the genocide. If the ideology is still there, and let me say this, there's people, especially the people who were not brought to justice, who live in Europe and somewhere else, who were strongly the ones who were spreading out the ideology of genocide. If group of that kind of people access to vulnerable youth, it's very easy to manipulate them again into that. So that's why Rwanda have really focused on empowering and inspiring youth. And second of all, Rwanda needs to grow, and Rwanda is growing fast. And I can say one of it is because the youth are majority provider in the development, how fast that Rwanda is developing today.
Willy, the World Economic Forum has put out a gender gap report. They do this annually. And Rwanda, in the latest one that came out 2 weeks ago, was in the top 5 for countries in the entire world to have the smallest gender economic gap. the United States is far down the list. So I am curious, what are the concrete and specific things that have been done in Rwanda to reduce the economic gap between men and women?
Thank you. So I think I mentioned a little bit about the story of a guy who started really empowering women, and that in kind of like inspired everybody to open their eyes. And first of all was, which I think a lot of countries that surround us that still have a big gender gap, they need to see, they need to what we saw was, first of all, to diagnose and see that there is issue in dividing and creating that huge gap between in gender. And the first thing that Rwanda did that focused on was forcing gender equality in education. If you start with gender equality in education, first of all, you're giving chance for people to speak up for themselves. One of the problem that was there is all these young girls, they couldn't speak up for themselves. They didn't have power of word. So giving them chance to be educated, and they're obviously going to have positions in workplaces and government. And second of it was fighting against this, I don't know what you call it in English. For bosses, let me put it in a simple English. By the way, English is not my first language. I still make a lot of mistakes. There was a lot of, I would say, gender violence in workplaces and school places. Put strong laws to fight against that. If you would if there could be a proof that you are not hiring someone based on their gender, you could lose your job and get in trouble. So that is, and then mostly is educating families. That's same thing that is a lot of countries that need to do, especially in Africa, and they are learning from Rwanda, is everything starts from families. That's what those places, those system like Umuganda, every last Saturday Umuganda, they will talk about it a lot, is educating families to empower their girls, to let girls go to school, to believe in girls, to the fathers not pushing their daughters to get married at the young age, to kind of like educate fathers and all the people to understand that our culture that should not support that a woman has to be married at a younger age, and that's the future of a woman. So the number one thing is literally educate families, and when you empower families, include both women and men. And then secondly, that one of the thing that I'm proud of, even my mom went through it, is co-ops, women getting together and forming co-ops and start up something, and the government will support them, or there's private organization that will support co-ops of women. Like Rwanda, majority of our GDP, I think, mostly comes from agriculture, and the number one thing Rwanda is known for is coffee. And a lot of women went into coffee co-ops where they planted coffee and produced coffee and started exporting coffee. And those women who formed those co-ops, they started their business, start growing and making up money. And that kind of also helped the families. The husband started realizing that, oh, my wife is not only for making children and cleaning the house, she is actually bringing in income, and our family is growing because of that. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but majority is educating families.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a little nervous. I usually don't speak up in front of large groups of people, but just on what you said, are you worried about how it's admirable that women are able to maintain jobs and that it's being seen within society, but do you think maybe potentially that could be not necessarily an issue, but taken advantage of in the future? Because I feel like in our society, at least, it has been taken advantage of, and people now it's two people have to work to maintain a living. And it's not even really maintaining a living. It's like you're struggling to survive.
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, someone was asking me that, is like, this kind of like empowering of women happen, is it gonna make men lazy and that kind of thing? I'm hoping that the culture will step on that, will step up, and our culture, as much as, you know, like we want to empower women to work, but there's still this kind of responsibility that also that will not allow men and people to kind of be lazy and not work, is in our culture. No matter what, even if I have my wife working and stuff, I would not stop, because in our culture that would be a shame. The society will shame you. So I don't think, as long as we don't lose so much of our culture, I don't think that will be an issue. And in general, the problem, I've noticed that here in America, that that people don't want to walk. Maybe because also there's a lot more, there's lot things, free things and opportunities that makes people don't want to walk. And I was wondering if that will happen to us. I honestly, I don't think so. I think in our culture, there is something that to be proud of walking, even if it's not about just making money. The fact that you have a drive, you have something to wake up to and go to work, it's kind of like a pride. So even if there is like, you get more, I don't think people will make people like kind of like stop walking. Please help me to understand if I really have tried to answer this question, and if I haven't, ask if I'm missing something.
No, you've answered the question in more ways than I even comprehended. More so, it's more about the government taking advantage of the fact that there are two working bodies and not just one, and utilizing that to their advantage.
Can you help me, like give me an example, like how like maybe like, because it haven't happened yet, I may not understand it, but like how does it happen here that a government could take advantage of two bodies working?
I guess the best example that I can just come up with off the top of my head is when, I think it was World War II, when women were, they were basically, they had to work because all the men were sent off to war. And so people, entities, powers started recognizing that and seeing that, okay, well, women can work too. And basically, maybe I'm being pessimistic about it, but I feel as though once men came back home, if they did come back home, that the government saw, okay, well, there's two working bodies now that we can potentially, exploit and take advantage of. I mean, I'm being a little about it, but that's just.
No, I understand. I think as in general, as we're all developing and the world is growing, the government system definitely, I can see how they can do that. But actually, when I was discussing this with my friends, I'm worried about if people are even gonna have enough work with this development going on and everything being replaced by machine. I'm looking even in my country, like it's happening so fast. So definitely you're right. I mean, government could exploit that, but I'm just mostly thinking on a positive side that if two people are working and they are getting something from the work they're doing, so it's gonna also help them a little bit. It's gonna develop their well-being, and I don't know if that's already, all I can say, if that's already kind of like happening here, it's not, I wouldn't say no, that it's not going to happen somewhere else. Because if you look, whatever that is happening in the Western world or developing country, it's what's going to happen to countries that are developing. It will catch up, and that could be an issue too in our country.
Oh, can you see her?
Yeah, I can see her.
I was wondering if you know what the color of your flag meant, the country of the color.
Yeah, so you've seen the color, right?
Yes.
So if I remember, there's first there's a green, and then in the green there's sun. There's green, blue, and yellow. So the blue is the light, the sky, and I don't know exactly. I know what the green means, and I know what the sun means, and what I don't 100% sure, I will have to double check on that, is the blue. The green is, we need green. We are farmer. The Rwanda have based on farmer, so green represents the well-being of plants and farming, and actually the country is green. If you Google pictures of Rwanda, you will see it's called a 1,000-hill country. The whole country is hilly, it's mountains, and the mountains are full of trees and greens. And Rwandans love rain. When the rain comes, the farmers are happy, so everything turns green. And the sun is the brightness that came, that there was dark and the sun came in brightness. The blue, I don't know 100% exactly what it means, but I will have to double check that, and maybe I'll get back to you guys, or I will send the email to the professor, then and she can explain a little bit more.
Actually, in some countries they change flag. In Africa, I know that because Ethiopia went through a lot of flag changing.
Yeah.
Has it changed, or has
it changed actually. It changed. If you get chance to Google the picture of the flag before genocide, it was different. It changed once since after genocide.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a nice conversation, huh? So I'm going to put the chair here, Willy. It's your face, and as if you were sitting here. Maybe one day we'll have you sit right here. Okay.
Actually, thank you for that. And actually, I just want to excuse. I haven't done much of this public speaking on the Skype, so it's a bit. I don't know if you could tell. I feel like I'm a bit nervous on Skype. I'm normally used to do it in person, so I can look at you guys in the eyes and connect with you more. So I look forward to one day maybe come.
You were excellent, and we'll send you the video. We don't know how well the resolution, but Trey worked and made that happen. Okay, so now we'll do give back. We did it this morning, so I don't have to explain it to Willy. He knows he's supposed to just take it, and then at the end he could say something. So anybody wants to start the give back? Yes.
Thank you once again for sharing your story. It was very personal and very telling of what you went through, especially sharing about your anger and how you dealt with it. And so I appreciate that, and thank you for.
I know.
Thank you, Willy, for sharing your story. It was really great to listen to you speak about women, especially after reading Cockroaches, because I was noticing how the little girl, she hated going to school. She always wanted to stay with her mom. So they would switch off and go back to school. But now learning how the girls are starting to get into school, that's really nice to know. So thank you.
Willy, thank you so much for sharing the grace that you have had through your trials. Sometimes it's hard to see a broad picture when you've been hurt, systematically and over, in a real way. And so being able to see from a broad perspective how to not only forgive, but to move on, and success is a testament to where you were planted. And so I just want to say thank you for being able to share that, because often you can go through the process, but it's hard to articulate. So I appreciate it.
For one thing, great. So you did good with public speaking. I want to thank you for sharing your testimony of how you came through from feelings of hate and overcoming those feelings into doing something great. And I thank you for sharing it with our school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey again. But no, seriously, I wanted to say thank you for being vulnerable, because I know that the work that you had to do personally and the work that you continue to do every day takes a lot of courage. And also, like, working with youth is something that I'm really passionate about and something I've been doing for the last 2 years in my community, and it's something that I will continue to do. So I just want to say, like, your story really inspired me to, like, stay in my community and keep working from the ground up to make it a more equitable place for everybody. Thank you.
Yes. Wow. I'll come to you.
Hi, I really want to thank you for your optimism. I think it's necessary, and we get our own emotions, and here at Evergreen we learn a lot of very important, harsh truths. So I appreciate that. And also, if I feel like you're speaking very well, but you exude a confidence. And that's amazing. And you also have a light about you that we can even feel and see through Skype. So thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Willy, for taking the time to be with us tonight and also this morning. I appreciate you sharing where Rwanda is at now and giving us that truth. I think sometimes from what we've heard, we get stuck in the past and then don't take the time to research in where it is now. So I appreciate knowing where it's at now and where it's going. Thank you.
Willy, you did it again. You did it again. Congratulations. I want to really applaud your art delivery, your heartfelt message, the experiences you have lived over and over again as you have shared with us. And I also want to really feel for a moment the loss of your twin brother and your father. I think it's a loss to the world. Someone so beautiful as you, we could have had two of you. Imagine. But you are really represented so well. And as I told you earlier today, I would be so proud of your mother, your grandmother, and once again, your family. So we want you.
Thank you.
You ever hear a dean talk like that? I know. Anybody else? Okay. 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 For the on behalf of the faculty, you know, our theme academic year is cycle makers, cycle breakers. Well, we see it in you. We see how you make and break cycles and keep doing that. I think that Rwanda is an example not only for Africa, but for sure Africa, but for the world. And my dear friend, you are an example of the triumph of the human spirit that we all yearn for. You give us something to build and something to hope for. We understand that forgiveness, as you so well stated, helps us. It helps us to heal as well. And it's not just about a hug. Rwanda has legislated forgiveness. That doesn't happen in countries. It has legislated that so people can come together and have spaces to talk across lines of abuse and everything like that. You are our example of a cycle maker, cycle breaker. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, guys.
All right.
I really appreciated this opportunity that that you guys gave me to share with you about my country and to talk about things that I love talk about. And one thing that I always like to ask people is, remember that all these things that we talk about, the book that you're reading about, the problems that you're reading about that have happening in the country are happening somewhere now in the world, and they're still happening. We keep saying never again, but it's happening. And I have come to accept that maybe it's built in us, in human nature, but we have to remember to keep doing better and be the ones who be the voices of the people and tell the story and the positive stories. So thank you so much, and really amazed by but the topics that you guys are learning about, that you even care to learn about small country that is far away. That is amazing, and I thank you so much for that.
We have to thank book. Dr. Lee suggested the book. Give her a hand. She did. So we'll be talking, Willie. All right. All right. Okay.
All right. Have a great evening,
everyone. Bye, Willie.
Bye.
It's hard to say goodbye, huh? It's not a song.